Yes. I'm so excited about this live streaming, Ed. It's sort of one of these tricks that you can play by just sitting at your computer. You can talk to the world. So, first of all, welcome to the call, Edward Clark.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
thank
pleasure.
you.
Look, I suppose just to give people a bit of background, what's today all about? Well, I've known Ed for a while, and we sort of came cross paths about 5 years ago, I think, when you were in your sort of heyday of Gallant Plumbing, and you weren't even a plumber, which was an unusual story already. So I think you came from a surveying background. Is that? Do you want to give us a bit of a background to you?
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, so I come from a business background, so
Mm.
studied business, and then I actually got into the trades by just wanting to learn how to build houses. So I actually studied a carpentry apprenticeship, and became a qualified builder in Victoria, Australia, and yeah, and then look, that really opened up my world to the trades, and since I suppose since then that was sort of the early sort of 2000 and sort of eight, nine, finished that trade.
Yeah,
And then from then I've had a number of trade businesses since. So,
yeah.
businesses in, building inspections, pre-purchase building inspections, pest control. And then that's where we met. I got into plumbing. Yeah.
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 So, sort of catching up to today, I suppose the reason that we're talking is that your new venture and really solving a major problem in the Australian economy, which is can't find tradespeople. So, maybe give us a bit of a story of how you sort of came to this sort of space and what you're doing in it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, Trade Up Recruitment. So it's an international recruitment business
Yeah.
which specialises bringing tradesmen in from different parts of the world and connecting them with local business owners.
Yeah.
So look, you're right. So when we met probably 5 years ago, I owned and still do own a business called Gallant Plumbing. It's a general maintenance plumbing business, and was looking to grow that business and trying to grow through acquisition. So buying existing businesses, bolting onto our existing business of Gallant, and we just couldn't find the guys. We just couldn't find the guys to execute on what we promised. And essentially, I stumbled across 5 years ago. I stumbled across the idea of sponsoring international tradesmen, so bringing guys in and their families in from countries like South Africa,
Yeah.
and providing them a pathway to, in their mind, a better life. And it was just, back then it was very very new to me, and 5 years on, it's just been fantastic. Our
Mm.
business at Gallup has experienced just these really wonderful people, um, and then because of that, it enabled me to transition. I can certainly talk more about that, but it enabled me to transition out of Gallant, and put in a management team into that business,
Yeah.
alongside of a general manager.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so Trade Up Recruitment was born. So essentially, finding wonderful tradesmen and connecting them with trade business owners who are in need. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and I've heard about this, and I've done this with a number of clients where they've started to look offshore, but it's always been
Mm.
like like a metal work factory who said there's no boilermakers, no one's applying for jobs in Australia, they just don't exist anymore. And I think one of the dilemmas we have in this country is that two things happened: the mining industry boom, which took almost every tradesperson that was worth anything and tripled their wage straight away, and
Yeah.
now, with all the infrastructure building projects
Yeah.
that the government's putting in play as well, it's really making it hard for tradies to find apprentices, to find fully qualified tradespeople. And this idea of going offshore for the small business owner is pretty daunting, I would guess. There's
Yeah.
paperwork, there's red tape, there's commitment, all sorts of things. Can you maybe explain some of the tips and traps for people who are considering getting tradespeople from offshore? Because it sounds like a great idea in principle, but what's really involved?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot involved. There is a lot involved, but you know, gee whiz, it's worth it. And so some of the things that people need to be mindful of is, well, what actually is it that you're looking for? What actually is the skill set you're looking for? And
Yeah.
and as a trade business owner, you're going to know that.
Mm.
And so where are they, and why would they want to come to Australia?
Yeah.
So we focus on countries like South Africa and Zimbabwe and the Philippines, and also the Middle East. And these tradesmen are, um, they're very qualified guys. And I will answer your question,
Yeah.
and I'll definitely get to it. But one thing I think in Australia is, being a tradie is hard. it's hard work.
Yeah.
And often, as generations have gone through, there are just easier ways to make money. There are easier ways to make a living. And so I think from that, the appeal to do a trade has probably waned a little bit over the last, call it 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, but also because of that, the whether we want to call it the depth of candidates in the market is I suppose, has changed too. So, um, uh, to answer your question around the tips and tricks of finding candidates,
Yeah.
um, I suppose you've got to know where to look. You got to know what you're looking for, and then it's just like any process, it's speaking. I mean, what we go through, and I probably might go through the process that we go through, but
Yeah.
it's multiple conversations about backstory, history, work history, and why. What's their, like anything, what's their why? Why are they wanting to come to Australia? When do they want to be in Australia? There's a lot of prep work that goes into becoming a skilled tradesman in Australia. So, for instance, I'll just say talk South Africa. So, if you're a plumber wanting to come to Australia, you need to undertake what's called your vet assess. So, to undertake your vet assess, it's a skills assessment. So,
Yeah.
vet assess is a government call it organisation
Yeah.
under the umbrella of Trades Recognition Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And Trades Recognition Australia engages vet assess to travel around the world and assess tradesmen wanting to come to Australia. So they actually undertake practical assessments in licensed trades.
Mm-hmm.
And some that aren't licensed, like boilermakers and welders, they do technical assessments.
Yeah.
But so basically, if a tradesman hasn't done their vet assess, it becomes very tricky for them, impossible for them to come here on a work visa. So that's number one. You've got to know that, so that that the tradesman has done their vet assess qualification.
Yeah.
They've got to look as well. The Department of Home Affairs has quite a long list of criteria that is required to ensure that that candidate is suitable for Australia. So it might be their age, it might be their qualification, it might be their financial means, it may be from where they're from. So have they done an apprenticeship? Where's the evidence around that? So they don't make it easy, but there is definitely a pathway, and as you said, a lot of companies are exploring it.
Yeah, because I think the thing is that COVID did an interesting thing to our economy, right? They almost demolished trade barriers to a large degree, right? So we used to think about offshoring as, there's some person in the Philippines or some other country that can plug into a computer and do some limited amount of work for us. But as these barriers were created for international travel, and as these barriers to even going into the office, people started saying, well, hang on, we can work from home. What's the difference if I'm working from home in Australia or in South Africa? So we demolished that barrier, number one. This is a new world, though. You're talking about lifting someone out of a country with their family and everything and moving them into Australia. And I can't help but feel like it's a prearranged marriage scenario where we're saying, well, you've got to make this decision and it's pretty permanent for both parties, right? I'm committed to getting this person to come over. And they're lifting their whole family out of their culture to come here. There's all sorts of risks associated with that, yeah?
Yeah, so... And that's part of the process of just having multiple conversations. So, it's understanding their why. We also speak to the family. So, speak to the partner and say, well, talk to me about what, is everyone on the same page here? Is everyone wanting to come to Australia? Why are you wanting to come to Australia? And a lot of the reason, in fact, the most significant reason is they're wanting a better life for their kids.
Yeah, right.
They're wanting a better life for their kids. So that's their why, which is really powerful. As a father of 3 young daughters, I get really inspired. I just get really inspired by these guys too. I would love to think that I would have the courage that they have to uproot themselves from a different part of the world, put it all on the line, right? To land in Australia with an employer that they sort of know, that they've met on Zoom 4, 5, 6, 7 times. A new culture, a new economy, a new, no community support. It's daunting. It's huge. And so we talk them through the process. We help them find, guide their hand around finding places to live, how to get a driver's license, tax filing, all that sort of, superannuation accounts, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, look, it is absolutely something that you need to be all in on, both from an employer side, but also a the candidate needs to know exactly what they're getting into,
Yeah.
because it's a big financial commitment. So it's a big financial commitment from both parties,
Yeah.
being the employer here and also the candidate. Just even the idea of booking flights from Africa, and for a family of four, well, that's $10,000. $10,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's
Someone's
just a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
someone's got to back this. I recall, as you say this, because my parents were immigrants into the country, and this was in the day that they came over by boat, right?
Yeah.
And they went to Australia, the promised land, and they had all these opportunities, but there's nothing in concrete. It was all done by letters and done by
Yeah.
go there and see what you can do. So it required a lot of risk and entrepreneurial spirit. And they succeeded, as many immigrants did. But they didn't come in knowing what they were walking into. Now, what you're describing is that we need to employ tradespeople. We can go out to the world and find tradespeople. We can assess their skills. The government will assist us in doing that. There's also incentives in place to bring qualified trades into the country. So there's support to actually get it to happen. But what you touched on there is this: it is life-changing for someone to move into a different society. And, we are a very lucky country here because, first of all, we have a good economy, even though some people might argue that at times, but relative to the rest of the world, the facts are that if you're on the dole in Australia, you're still in the top 10% of income earners on the planet. Means if you get paid here, you're up there, right? And these people are hard workers because everywhere that I've seen immigrants coming in and taking on some sort of trade, they usually have great skills. They are committed because they've almost burnt the bridge to come across here. And like you say, $10,000 for a ticket, someone has to pay. It's not free.
Yeah.
And they're coming here not to say, I'll give this job a go for 3 months and see how I go. They're coming here saying, hey, we're moving into another.
Yeah, another place. And just like to talk about, they're not going back. They're not going back. In a lot of these countries, if these tradesmen, they're business owners, they're supervisors, or they're top employees within those businesses. Now, if they're a top employer in their business and they leave, because their unemployment rate in a lot of these countries are so high, it will be snapped up really quickly, their position, right? So there's no position for them to go back to. Again, they're all in. Secondly, if they've run their own business or, they've closed the business, they've sold the business. So, they're just wanting to make it work. And you're right, they're hardworking. But one thing I love probably most about this business and the impact it's having on these families is they're so grateful. There's this beautiful level of gratitude where, it's which is so refreshing. And I'm not demanding it, but it's just like it's so refreshing to go, wow,
Yeah.
Ed, thanks so much for the opportunity. And I go, mate, you deserve it. You've done everything that you've done the heavy lifting. But it's just so lovely to be a part of their journey and the meaningful impact that it has on their families and their kids. Things that we take for granted, like pushing our kids on a swing on a Sunday in the park, right? It's just like, my gosh, I'm going through that stage at the moment with 3 young kids. So, it's something that we really appreciate and take for granted. So, yeah, look, it is a really lovely thing, that gratitude piece, and and they want to make it work. So it is not a short-term thing. Yeah.
So let's talk about practical application. So out there in the marketplace right now, there's a ton of trades that are really struggling to find apprentices, qualified tradespeople, electrical contractors, plumbers, chippies, you name it. What's the next step for these guys? How do they work out whether this is even a viable option for them?
Yeah. So if it's a phone conversation. So if they're keen to understand more about international recruitment, I'd be more than happy to have a phone conversation with the business owner. Or just jump online and you're certainly more than welcome to pop onto our website, which is tradeuprecruitment.com.au.
More importantly, though, the question is, because you have a qualifying process, right? So you said before the call, we're very selective about who we work with. What's the criteria?
That's right.
Do you want to go through?
Yeah. So this is not just the candidate comes here, the candidate from overseas, the tradesman comes here with a long-term view, right?
Yeah.
This is not a short-term 3-month thing. This is
Okay.
they want to be a part of your business for, multiple years. And as a trade business owner, that is music to my ears. I want them. I'm after loyalty. I'm after a rock star in my business for 5 years, right?
Yep.
So this is the business, but the business owner over here needs that same view. They need to have that mentality that this is a long-term view.
Yeah.
And also they've got to appreciate, business owners have got to appreciate that these candidates are putting a lot on the line, right?
Mm.
So everyone, for this to work, for this relationship to work between the business owner and the candidate, everyone's got to meet in the middle. It is a real partnership. It is a real understanding that, if we've got great, clear communication and we
Yep.
understand what everyone's expectations are,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a great match.
So,
It's a really good match. So it's very much that the business owner needs to be, I suppose, long-term committed.
yep.
They've got to be obviously understand the financial component of it. So it's not just a $2,000 commitment.
Mm.
The visa itself for a 4-year 482 visa can be anywhere from the nomination of the visa and the levies around $10,000 ish. So it's not a sort of a cheap exercise, but I suppose the business owner needs to have a long-term view on it. Yeah.
So first criteria is they have a long-term view. The second criteria
Yep.
is they're willing to invest, because you're talking about $10,000 just in costs, and then we've got relocation costs on top of that,
Yep.
right? So
Well, a lot of the candidates pay for their own relocation,
okay,
right? So the business owner is not responsible for paying for the relocation of the
gotcha.
candidate, right? And this is why, again, it works, is because they've got, the candidate, everyone's got skin in the game. Everyone's got, some financial commitment here for this to work,
Yeah.
right? So, it's important, and I think that's why it works so well.
Okay. So is there any other criteria that you think are critical other than long-term view, understanding that there's a fairly hefty investment that sounds
I mean, there's also obviously the understanding around visas and
yeah,
migration and what's involved and what the qualifications are and what the timeframes are. So this is something that can take anywhere between 3. So it's not I need a tradesman now. They're here next Monday. It's
yeah.
it's sort of anywhere between a 3 and 6 month proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Also, by the time you interview them the first time to the time they land and start working.
Yeah.
So it's understanding the time frame. The migration is important. That's essentially it.
Mm-hmm.
There's other little tactical things, but there's stuff that we talk through on the
Yeah.
initial conversation.
So I
Yeah.
would also assume there's an expectation that you're going to hang on to this person for a few years, because
Yep.
they sort of
Yeah.
jump on a plane and get over here. It's not like you say, well, I'm not happy with this guy's performance, because I guess if they don't have a job here, they have to go back. Like, what happens there?
Yeah. So it depends on the visa. So there are a number of pathways around visa, but
Yeah.
and I'm not a licensed migration agent.
Yeah.
We partner with a lot of them, but it does depend on the visa.
Okay.
These guys, as you can imagine, the tradesman doesn't want to shop around, jump around. They're here for long term. So in terms of a commitment from the business owner, the business, you've got to give this candidate a really good opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
Why I like these candidates is they're pretty straight up. They want the feedback right between the eyes. I want to know. They want to know if they're doing a good job or they're not, and if they're not, what can they improve? Right? There's no sort of dilly-dallying around that, which is good. But in terms of, do they need to keep them? No, they don't. Right? So if they're not performing for whatever reason, or they don't live the culture or the values, I mean, we as a business, we do a lot of personality profiling, testing their skills. We actually also test their skills as well from a practicality side of things, on top of vet assess.
Yep.
So, but just it's got to work for everyone. So if it doesn't work for both parties, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah, gotcha.
So no, there's no obligation, but I suppose it's just understanding that everyone's made a big commitment. Everyone needs to be given a fair opportunity. Yep.
Yeah, because I think like the nice thing about this whole process is you run a plumbing organisation already, and you've gone through this process for yourself. Can I just ask if you can share how many people you have in Gallant that have sort of been through this process?
Yeah, so we've had a dozen people.
Doesn't
Yep.
it? Right.
Yep. Yep.
So, and
We,
how long have you been doing that for? Over what?
we've been doing that for 5 years.
5
Over
years.
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's
So we've
literally,
had a dozen people. I mean, so we've sort of it gets to a stage where you're only allowed a certain amount, of people in your business
yeah,
as per a percentage of the total employees.
yes.
So we're sort of getting semi close to that, but all of our key supervisors are from overseas.
Hmm.
A lot of our top tier tradesmen all from overseas too. And obviously, we have got some great local talent as well. But the guys that we're bringing in have got a business owner mentality. So they've employed multiple, dozens of people from overseas. So they look through a different lens. They
Yeah.
look through a very, very different lens to your typical tradesman here in Australia,
Yeah.
because they've been sitting in my seat, yeah. So they understand the complexities of running a business. Yeah, but and they're just willing and keen and wanting to learn and wanting to
Yeah.
get into it, and to wanting to grow. Yeah, wanting to grow with the business.
And
Yeah.
can I ask you what happens in terms of integration? Because obviously you're bringing people from different cultures into a company, different
Mm.
countries into a company. How do the local tradies relate or feel about this?
Yeah, so my experience has been pretty positive.
Yeah.
Um, and positive because the guys that we're bringing, they're good blokes.
Yeah.
Like, they're good guys.
Yeah.
And we also educate them. I must educate them. We give them a really good, I suppose, lay of the land of where they're going into,
Hmm.
and just things to be conscious of. And some things they can, do, just really be um, clear on showing gratefulness to the local tradies that train them up,
Yeah.
and don't go in too bullish on a job. Just the first 6 months, the first objective is just build rapport. Build rapport with your work colleagues. If you
Yeah.
build rapport with your work colleagues, guess what? They're going to train you, and they're going to like you, and they're going to want to train you, and they want to go on jobs with you, and it just becomes easy. So yeah, that's just an education thing that we do, is just so
Mm.
that they really, hit the ground running, and there's none of this. There's no jostling. Yeah.
Yeah, because even though you say it's a 3 to 6 month process, compared to traditional model where that tradesperson had to make an executive decision and say to his family, "We're going to Australia, and I'm going to find work there because I believe it's there. I've seen it online." You're actually fast tracking that process, and I
Mm.
think you alluded to it. We're not talking about low level skill sets and low level people here. We're talking about people who are actually coming here to want to make a difference. So there's a lot of positives
Yeah.
to this solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are, and these skills, as I said before, they're business owners, they're supervisors, they're team leaders, they're
Mm.
they're, they're guys at the top of their field.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of the positive impact, like,
Mm.
they are good people. They are really good people.
Yeah.
So they want to get a part of the community. They want to be a part of the business, but they also, they don't necessarily want to, hang in there. Amongst the tribe of, called, other South Africans, they want to get out and start a new life.
Yeah.
They want to meet the mums in the schools and the dads in the schools. They want to be a part of the running group. They want to go to church. They're just really down to earth, good people that, again, want a better life for themselves and the kids. Yeah.
So look,
Mm.
obviously you've been through this over 5 years. You've learned a lot about the do's and the don'ts and the traps and the tribulations. Some of the people who'd be looking at this from outside looking in, they've got big fears around this unknown. Yeah. How do they alleviate those fears? What do they need to be doing or thinking about or looking at to actually make this a bit more plausible?
Yeah. So we have a few clients like that they're like, oh, it sounds great, but I just don't. It's just too big a step.
Yeah.
So what I say to them is, look, have a meet and greet on a Zoom with them with a likely candidate
Yeah.
for half an hour.
Yeah.
Can you visualize this guy in your business?
Yeah. Right.
Get to know him. Get to, just why not spend an hour even just to get to know the guy's backstory. Obviously get to know the skill set.
Yeah.
Why are they looking to come to Australia?
Mm.
And why that's just a really great first step is the business owner goes, oh wow, one, he speaks great English. Two, he's really likable.
Yeah.
Really likable.
Yeah.
Three, he's well and truly competent. Like, he's competent. In fact, he's probably more competent than a lot of the guys I've got in my business already, right? And it's the truth. Like, it just is. And then, you know, would he fit? Would he fit in the culture? You know,
Yeah.
and so that's the first bit. And then the rest is logistics. You know, obviously there's multiple stages you go through, and then personality profile, and actually see the test to make sure, yeah, what he says he can do, he can actually do.
Yeah.
You know, and then, but that's really the first step, is just having a conversation, you know, and then there's nothing, it's a pretty low commitment, you know, it's a pretty low commitment, a half an hour chat with someone.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's funny because everything you just described, they should be doing anyway in recruitment. And
Yeah, you bet.
if you're
But
hiring a local guy, the first thing is,
yeah, if you're hiring locally, I know from experience, if you get a plumber, if you find a plumber in Melbourne on a Friday afternoon and he comes in and you find him on Seek, if you don't interview him and give him employment within a few hours,
yeah, he's gone.
opportunity lost. You know, so you just haven't got that. You haven't got the opportunity to really delve, you know, into what needs to be delved into. Whereas in this pathway, you definitely do.
And I think, like, the whole message here is, you know, we've opened the doors to global trading in so many different ways. And there's some sort of pushback, you know, with this whole idea of, you know, protectionism and this whole idea of, you know, we have rights and da 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 da. And in reality, we're not talking about just letting people come in and decimate a market. We're talking about just trading across a wider range of candidates for both parties, right? Because those people in those countries, they're going, this is my way to do things to improve the life of my family. And for the guys here, this is a way of actually providing high caliber service delivery rather than just trying to find someone who's not that skilled but is the only person that applied for a job. So technically, it's a win-win situation. Is there any downside that you've seen or any negative impact that's occurred as a result of?
So, I mean, so just to reiterate your point, all these trades that we're bringing in, they're on a medium-term skill shortage,
Yeah.
classified by the Department of Home Affairs. So it's not as though, you know, you or I are saying, well, we need plumbers. Well, no, the government agencies are saying that we've got shortages, right? So, and Lion Freddie will say it anyway. So, are there any pitfalls? Was that your question? Any pitfalls around? Yeah. So, look, one thing I would say is just, I suppose, it's slowly. You know, the hiring slow, really hiring slow. So, you know, it's having multiple conversations with people.
Yeah.
So pitfalls are, you know, from my experience, has been, so we personality profile everyone in our business. So everyone being all the candidates that come through, and then also, you know, really testing their skills. So really, truly testing their skills.
Yeah.
And getting into the detail of, and that's we do that with training facilities here in South Africa and other countries that we build relationships with. But so it's understanding, like, are there any sort of things we need to know? Like, so the more touch points you can have along the way, the better to remove any of those. Oh, hold on, what's happening here? What haven't I picked up?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I probably haven't answered your question that well, but it's just around really hiring slowly to going through a process.
My take on this is that what you're talking about is things people should be doing anyway. Which is, if I'm going to employ someone, you know, I always look at it and say, if you're going to employ someone, you've got to assume they're going to be hanging around. Like, the ideal scenario, you want them for 5 years, right? Or more. Now, if that's the truth and their wage is around, let's say it's 80,000, right? That's 400 grand you're committing to investing with this person. And I often say people spend less time recruiting than they do, you know, deciding on which restaurant to go to. But if I said, I want you to spend $500,000 on a property, you'll spend months researching it. And so when we talk about recruiting people and the amount of time that should be spent in due diligence, which is what you've just described, testing them out, asking questions, doing the research, there's an investment return, which means if I pick the wrong candidate, I'm going to have to replace them. If I pick the right candidate, then I'm going to get some sort of good return on my investment of time and money. So I feel like it's a parallel. It's exactly the same criteria. But now what we've got is just a broader market that we can go to. And from the other side of it is actually these people who are in these other countries have now got an opportunity to take their whole family into a new world.
yeah, and I've said it a few times, but gee, Dave, it is so special being able to provide that opportunity for that
Yeah,
family. You know, I look the guys that we brought into our business at Gallant. I just look at them. I look in their eyes. We've got this, we've got this real connection. Like not, it's just a deep connection. And I'm really interested in how they're settling in. I'm really interested in how how their families are going, how their kids are going at school.
mm,
I care about them. I really want them to have it,
yeah,
the best life in Australia,
yeah,
and and they respect me, I respect them. This is not a master servant relationship. This is a partnership that we're just all in this for this to be a raging success. I am barracking for these guys.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely barracking for them,
yeah,
and because it just works.
yeah,
Do you think they're a great employee? They are just rock stars.
yeah,
They're just rock stars. They're just so good. They're so loyal. They're so honest. They're so keen. They're so willing. And there's just so much upside for them.
yeah.
So it is such a win-win.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Ed,
mm.
mindful of time, if anyone wants any further information or even just to have a chat about whether this is for them, they can find you at Trade Up Recruitment. Um,
Yeah,
or
yeah. So,
well,
tradeuprecruitment.com.au,
yeah,
and all our contact details are on there,
yeah.
and they can certainly more than happy to have a chat with them. Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Really appreciate your time today. Great insight. I love stories like this because it just means, there's an opportunity, there's a window that can actually help people a lot, and it helps both parties. So fantastic. Thanks for sharing all that info with everyone today too.
great, Dave. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers.